Hey guys, this will be video 2 for the how to design build a custom 58 Explorer and paint it sapphire blue, which is going to be really cool. I just did about a 15-minute video which got way too technical and way too long-winded, and unfortunately I wanted to leave it, but it was just way too much information, so I erased it, and I'm going to start over and talk about what the client has requested and what I've agreed to do, and even what I had suggested in the last video, or the first video. I had mentioned I need to know about your playing style and the feel you want, and he said he wanted the thinner neck. He liked that idea. So, and also he did mention, typically his location as to where he plays and stuff like that. He does play outside a little bit, so that lets me know I need to be careful about the color. And I did get the tint in, so we'll open that box in a minute. But I was ready to glue the neck in already a day or two ago, and it's about 99% fit right now. It's pretty darn close. I'm gonna stop, but I just want to let you know I'm pretty close to finished. Well, actually, no. I'll go ahead and show this in case I forget, because see, the video ended on me early, and I wasn't able to finish it. But if you're building a guitar, that's how your initial fitment needs to be. Now, proceed with caution. You don't want the neck to fall out on the floor, but that baby's in there rock solid. It's actually in there a little bit too tight, and I'm going to be loosening it up on this side primarily because I want the neck to move that way about a quarter of a millimeter, or like 120 thousandths, just minimal, because I engineered all this per the center line, and right now I'm falling to the left of the center line about a quarter of a millimeter, or about 120 thousandths. It's close enough for rock and roll, and it's close enough for classical, but if it's tight, well, don't loosen it up over here, because you might worsen matters. Loosen it up on that side and then move it in that direction. So, and then also these, hell, I shouldn't have even brought this up, but I guess I'll have to go ahead and talk about it. When I build these bodies to go either for a bolt-on neck, I build them just ever so slightly wider right here because of the kind of like the Telecaster and the Stratocaster body. You don't want it to be paper thin when you machine up in here. You want to have that round over. But if you glue the neck in, then you're going to want to shape that material right there off. I'm going to stop. But this is all about building a guitar. You want to hit pretty darn close to your target, but just be prepared to shape your neck to your body. Let me stop. I shouldn't have even picked that body up, but I just wanted to show that it's machined and it's ready to receive the neck. Okay. So, make sure that doesn't fall off. Okay. So anyway, so I did just that. I shaped the neck down a little bit just on the top. I wasn't planning on doing a video, but then I got to thinking, I thought, well, if I'm going to title a video series, how to do something, well, I need to show you a little bit as to how to do that. Now, if you really want to see how to build this guitar from the beginning, go to the video series from months back called How to Design Build a 58 Explorer Replica Using Stuart McDonald Templates. There you'll find the extreme details of coming out of the gate, looking at the plans, taking the plans into templates, taking the templates to the woodwork shop, buying your wood, laying out your wood, roughing it out, and building it from blocks of wood. I'm not going to do that in this video series, because this video series is more so for the client to see the progress of this build. And the progress so far is thinning this neck down to a thinner profile. I have not shaped the bottom yet, but when you change something that is actually already pretty much finished, you've got to protect a lot of the areas that are already finished, so you don't have to repair them, obviously, but so that you don't lose it, because you may be planning on building this as a stain grade. And speaking of wood and material, this board on the left and this board on the right came from the same blocks of wood, the same tree basically. So, and that's not tinted. That's just clear nitrocellulose lacquer. And what mahogany does over time, you can see how much lighter it was to start with, but then it gets darker and darker and darker. So if you're building a stain grade guitar or a clear coat guitar, man, you have got to protect all of this right here and all of this so closely. And well, the whole thing, obviously, because when you're changing that finished profile, you can't lose any of this corner here because that's the finished taper. You know, roughly 2 3/16 of an inch, about right here, down to 1 23/32. But I am changing it, and I've got my jig set up over there, and it was pretty easy. The first thing I did was engineer the flat. So if you had this round surface, I just came in here and I took it down about a 1/16 of an inch right here, and about a 32nd of an inch right here, and then I created that flat. Okay, you could create that flat with an overhead router with a surfacing bit, or you could do it on a drill press with a high-speed drill press with a bit in it, and the neck on the appropriate taper or pitch that you want. I'm not going to start talking about that stuff. It's way too complex for this video, but there's ways to do it. Or you can just pick up a really nice piece of a maple block that you trust, that you got from Stuart McDonald about 20 something years ago, 23, 24 years ago, which it's still as straight today as it ever was. And then you just take that piece of maple with 120 grit and you trust your hand to eye coordination and you flatten that baby out. And as you are flattening it out, in order to make certain it is maintaining a flatness, you're just keeping a real nice engineered straight edge on it. It's as simple as that. I didn't do any of that with the machine work. I flattened out that by hand, exactly how I just showed you. Put it on my table saw over there and just worked my way to the finish line. And when I say finish line, that's pretty much the finish line right there. But up here, I've still got about a 32nd of an inch that I can drop. So after the guitar is built, and this neck, or after the neck is roughly finished, glued into the body, epoxied into the body, and then it feels like a guitar, then I literally am holding it in my hand with a temporary, like a temporary platform, and I'm just kind of asking myself, okay, how does it feel so far? Do I feel a shoulder, or do I feel like it's rounding over properly per 84 Kramer specs or mid Kramer specs, 80 specs, and it is, very much is. And the cool thing is I have not even machined the bottom part yet, and it already feels incredible. It feels really good. Because this, even though this is flat, this is a finished thickness fretboard. And if you have those little references, or better yet, order like a piece of maple fretboard from Stuart McDonald or something like that, taper it and just have it laying around the shop so that you can throw it up there because it's already radiused, and then you can truly pretty much feel the finished guitar. Okay? So let me get organized here so I don't get off track. But it's just all, done by hand initially. You have to create that flat because once it goes back into your jig, your router bit has to have something to work by. And if you were only taking off, maybe a 32nd of an inch through the whole profile, then you don't need any of this stuff. Every bit of that is going to be done by hand anyway on your jig, where you've got it in a jig. And this is actually how I shape my necks. I'm actually rolling like that right there. And I learned that from the Robert Benedetto How to Build Archtop Jazz Guitar video series. I studied those relentlessly. And everything that he was doing, he was actually sanding it really hard directly across to shape it. And then he started changing the grits of sandpaper down to eventually to 220. was close enough to get you started. And you're just shaping everything by hand. And if you've got it on some sort of jig where you can put your palm up there or your grip, you can feel the neck come alive, even if it is mounted atop some sort of jig, that is, 1 3/4 of an inch wide down here, tapers up to roughly, 2 1/4 up here. And you could just do like a 2x4 or something like that, like a more narrow jig, but that's dangerous, really, really dangerous, because you'll get sand happy and you won't realize that you're standing and you're losing this edge here that is the finished guitar. So I like the idea of my tapering jig being very much very close, or at a minimum flush with the neck, and my jig is definitely tapered. And then I can just monitor with those pencil lines how close I'm getting to the finished project as I'm shaping it. Let me check the time. I need to stop. Yeah, man, 11 minutes of borderline rambling there. So let me get back on point and talk about. I just want to let you know that you don't have to pull out, all the heavy machinery and $3,000 overhead routing machines to pull this stuff off. Every bit of this is done by hand, and it's just it's kind of like building a chair leg. I hate to degrade the luthier. I don't know, the mystique behind being a luthier. You're basically just building chair legs, okay? And they're either straight or they pitch a little bit. So if you can build furniture, you obviously can build a guitar, okay? So the heel is already pretty much near finished, but by changing the thickness of this, by dropping this thickness at the 11th fret about a 32nd of an inch, and by dropping it about exactly 1/16 of an inch, maybe just a little bit more, at the first fret, you can see how much it took off by getting to that final pass, PASS. This is the original right here, and I'll just do the best I can to show it. I don't know. I know the reflection will eventually pick it up, but you might be able to see see that jump right there? That's the original. So it's dropped considerably. So, and it's amazing when you're adjusting your router bit down, you better go in micro turns, because you'll make a pass that you'll never forget because you'll lose it. But by just that little bit, it was amazing. It was shaving off a lot more material down here, but then it was feathering out and barely shaving up here. But nonetheless, it's still cut from that point right there all the way up to that point right there. And I mean, it was just feather shaving it. So that's what I meant by, if you do all this with bits, you got a beautiful compound radius transition right here after you make that turn. And so you have to have a little block glued on here temporarily, so that this is one of the most important parts of this video, so that as this router bit is coming down here cutting it, when it turns this curve, it has something to follow and not fall on. Because if this were the bottom of the heel left without a block, as soon as you got to the bottom of the heel, you run the risk of, you could just about guarantee that you're going to lose your heel. It's going to jump or fall on you, because you're doing all this by hand, and you need some sort of, you need a jig and you need little stops. You don't have to do any sort of block stop up here for the router bit. You could if you wanted to. You could do that exact same thing where you put some sort of, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Actually, that's actually really wise. If you'd never done it before, maybe temporarily glue some sort of little block right there that would stop the router bit in a certain way. But the way my jig is designed in the base of the router ends up, I use a rectangular base. It's really large. It ends up hitting right here and stopping anyway. So you have to shape all this by hand with your micro rasps. And that's exactly what I will use to come in and shape and blend, sandpaper, obviously. Okay, and then once you glue it into the body, then you can still come back after at any time. We all know this. You can come back at any time and do all your final shape work. And I even, when I build a guitar, if I'm doing a finished guitar, then I'll have the strings on it before I ever do any nitro cellulose, even the priming work, and I'll play it and get a feel like if I was building something really unique, and then I'll shape it while the strings are still on it, and it's not plugged in or anything. I mean, it's not, the electronics are not finished. It's just an acoustic solid body guitar, and you're shaping it and you're playing for the feel and all that jazz. Okay, check the time, because what I'm going to do is probably, I was thinking about doing this in video, in other words, pausing the video and going over there and doing the additional routing, but I don't want the distraction, and I don't want to try to prove how good of a luthier I may be or a repair guy, because that's usually when you make a fool of yourself, and I can't risk effing this up. So what I'm going to do, let me check the time. 16 minutes. Yeah, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just keep about another 5 to 10 minutes of this conversation based on theory. And then I'm going to end the video, upload it, and then I'm going to go do all this work, because I've got numerous videos where I show you how to either glue in a neck using a tight bond or some sort of, I don't use resorcinol, I just never have, but I either use a tight bond or an epoxy. And 9 times out of 10, I epoxy my necks in, because I've seen too many pictures that guys have sent me of guitars that they've wanted repaired where they took a fall, and they typically fall, and that's where they make contact. And Gibson was so brilliant that they cut this headstock they cut all the headstock off, and they glued this enormous long board down through here to make it really, really strong, which is really, really completely unnecessary. And as long as you're a really good woodworker, you're gonna want to show how good you are at blending end grains. So, and I'm being a bit of a smartass here, but by making that so substantially strong, it assured them that when their guitar hit the floor, it broke right here, because they did all their heavy machine work. This is not the type bit. They did all this massive cutout right here for a really large socket to go up in here and adjust a 1/4-inch nut. Well, all of the wood is gone, and that's why I build my necks this way. I leave an enormous amount of wood in. There's an enormous amount of strength and tone that is left in my necks. And then once you put your historically accurate truss cover over it, hey man, it might as well be a 1958, but with the added benefit of all this engineering that they didn't have it in the 50s. They didn't have the double adjustable truss rod. But by making that headstock so strong up here, it guaranteed almost that when it took that blow, it broke or fractured right here. And if it didn't break or fractured right here, because the necks might have been poorly glued in, or and if that'll give you an idea of some of the machine work that was in 1980 from that manufacturer. I'm not throwing them under the bus, but if you do that type of fit work and then you just do a little bit of glue, a little bit of brushed on glue, whatever it is they use, a yellow glue, which is fine. White glue, yellow glue, whatever, woodworking glue is excellent, as long as you have, that type of fitment. Then yeah, that stuff's going to be super strong. And if and when that guitar falls and takes that blow, it's not going to turn loose up here or fracture. And just look at all the pictures of damaged guitars, and you'll see a lot of that where when it just took a normal fall, it blew it apart here at the body. It broke the headstock. And I'm getting a little bit negative, but we're talking theory here, and my reasoning for why I build guitars a certain way and the certain materials that I've used. But if I epoxy glue my necks in, then I'm just about guaranteed that and the way I build my headstocks is if and when that one of my guitars takes a fall, it's going to blow apart right here. It's going to crack right here, and it's going to blow that lower headstock apart, and it's going to look unbelievably catastrophic. But it's kind of like a crumple zone in a car. You did not fracture or you did not lose the any of that location right here, and because you were epoxy glued into the body, or with a fitment like this, I could glue that in with almost Elmer's glue for children's toys, and it would be stronger. But I'll be epoxy gluing that in most likely, and that way it'll guarantee that the neck is never going to blow out of the body. And if it were to take that fall, it's going to break right here. And that's a repair that just about any luthier can re-epoxy that on there, that bottom, and then sand it, finish it, do the touch-up Nitro Cellulose work, and within a few days, you're back in business. And I say that to say this: I'm really serious. I've got multiple emails and pictures that guys have sent me of beautiful old vintage Gibson and Gretsch guitars, and well, just pretty much anything other than Fender. It's almost like they don't break because the engineering was so brilliant. And it's so sad because that's the fractures that you see. They're fractured right here at the body. They're typically cracked in here where they went into the body, and then they're typically really broken apart really bad right here, if not completely separated from the neck itself. And then you're sitting there looking at this headstock carcass laying over to the side, and it's got that super strong engineered top right there. And they claim it's because they don't want to see the end grain right here, and they want to see a real pretty continuation. But I'm going to spend a few more seconds with this, and I'm going to sound like I'm a real smart ass, but what it really boils down to is if you want this wood to be continuous all the way out, then the blank of wood that this gets machined out of has to be substantially thick. Okay, it has to be fairly thick this way in order to carry this, as much of this neck all the way out, because of the taper. The more it tapers down and remains a part of the original lumber, then yes, it has to be a substantially thick board. But if you cut it right here, and if you cut it right there, your actual lower is stopping about right there. And that allows you to build your neck rough out your neck out of thinner material. There's nothing wrong with that, but just let people know that you're being thrifty on building your instruments. And that's the reasoning why we had to do this board here, because hell, we ran out of material out of the tree. The tree wasn't wide enough up here. Okay, I hope that makes sense, because I know it will for you guys that are woodworkers. But I like building my necks this way because they're intentionally designed to break apart in a certain way if they fall. And also, it's beautiful because it shows the ability to blend and match all of your end grains, and whether it be from this direction and then all that. So let me check the time. 24 minutes of a bunch of smart-ass rambling. But I've been doing this a long time, enough to know that, okay, I get that. That's brilliant. That makes a lot of sense why they would have done a certain thing. Because if they're building 3,000 guitars a year, and we can start out with a billet of wood that is a certain thick, is maybe 8-quarter rather than 12-quarter, or 8-quarter rather than 10-quarter, or possibly even we could take one 12 quarter and rip it down the middle, and now we're 6.5 or something like that, blah, blah, blah. And you can end up getting two necks out of one board, whereas another guy trying to do what I'm doing, you can only get one neck. And that's substantial for the bottom line. It always boils down to being efficient with your material, because the labor's not really going to change. And I'm going to stop because I'm going to start getting too theoretical. But you just, if we're working in our basement shop building one neck for a client, we don't have to worry too much about that stuff. But it just boils down to production and the bottom line. Okay, but I like the fact that, as I mentioned, we drop guitars. They do fall they fall off the bed, or shit happens. Then if it is going to break, let's control that break so that it's real easy to repair. Okay. All right. Now I'm not even gonna pause the video. I'm just gonna go ahead and talk theoretically about when you're getting ready to install a neck in a body. And I'm not going to spend too much time with this because I probably spent about 5 minutes too much time talking about the headstock stuff. But I hope I drove it home. And I hope I talked about that. Yeah, I'm almost certain I did. That's the reason that's on there, is to control the router bit. So let's say you were finished doing all your rough machine work, where you're changing the profile. You just put it back up on your jig, and you did all this shaping with your rasp and your stuff, all that jazz, and you're ready to glue the neck in. You've always maintained a center line in the build from the very beginning, and any time that center line got faded, you better have picked up your straight edge and made certain that you clarified it. And the center lines that I work with that's the beginning. Hopefully that's in the camera. That's the beginning of the fretboard. That's the beginning of the headstock face if you were to do an overlay. And obviously, I'm not going to pull it out because that would be the nut location. Okay. Then you've identified the first fret location with that line right there. And then you've identified the 11th fret location with that line right there. And this is typically your very first identifying mark right here. Well, actually, it's from the beginning of the fretboard, because that's the 19th fret location. And so you've always maintained these lines, because as you're working with it, you're just going to lose the pencil line, because you've got to maintain these lines so that once you do go to your body and get ready to, that block won't allow it to sit down, but when you're getting ready to install it into your body, whether it be a arch top or pick your poison, you're working with three different factors that I've covered in major in-depth in a lot of different videos. You're working with pitch, and you're working with roll, and you're working with yaw, which, if any of you guys out there that are pilots or have ever studied aviation, this is the exact concept of flying an airplane. You're either pitching the nose up or you're pitching the nose down. You're rolling to the right or you're rolling to the left, which they call it a bank also, or you are yawing as you are crabbing into the wind, okay? Or if you're landing, you can do crosswind landings and all that jazz. It's the same principle for gluing that neck and that body, because what it boils down to is all you're trying to do is just, let me just put it in place. You're just trying to maintain that center line, which that's the number one issue. And then you're trying to maintain this pitch right here. Okay, so the yaw is what defines your center line from the nut to the bridge, making certain that everything lays out really well. And the Explorer is one of the most difficult builds you can do, because everything is straight. You don't have compound curves in a funky, cool French curve pick guard. If you get this off substantially, well, then it'll screw up your pick guard, which now is not aligning with your body. So getting the Explorer neck yawed into the body, YAW, or on center line, is unbelievably critical. It's critical in all guitars, but especially in this guitar because of the footprint design. Then your pitch is determining, that join right there. And then your roll, this is where it really defines whether you have a fine playing guitar or not. You've got to make certain that your fretboard is, I think it's wise to just keep the fretboard perfectly level. But if you were going to do anything, allow that part of the fretboard on the entire playing to drop just 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 a little. Do not dare allow. I'll try to do this so you can see it. Do not allow your fretboard to get high like that. In other words, do not allow your neck to roll to the left, viewing from this fashion. If anything, just try to keep it flat. And if you did an exceptional job building your body and the top is extremely flat and it's really beautiful and everything's nice, then you should be able to trust what you feel here and what you feel here to let you know whether you got that neck rolled into the body properly. And if you can see, my bass side is rolled lower, just about maybe a 64th of an inch, not much, only because the bass strings are, when they're oscillating, I believe is the word, when they're oscillating, they tend to oscillate in a bigger pattern than the high strings. I'm splitting hairs here, but you're safe to just put it in flat, okay, as it runs up, okay? Now, and I'm not going to, I'm trying not to confuse you here, but the whole idea about the design of this guitar, when it goes into this body, this point coming up here, when it hits at the 19th fret, it is by nature of the design, just a little bit of this material gets planed off, not much. When you plane this off, you'll be losing about maybe 3/16 of an inch, maybe a quarter of an inch of the material right there, because I'm not going to start talking about that. But because if you don't take that off, you're going to end up too high back here. If you're pitched at roughly 2 degrees, I'm pitched at 2.25 degrees. Okay. All right, I'm gonna stop because that's too much information, probably. But for you guys that are truly woodworkers and you've never built a guitar, you're able to follow along with what I'm saying, and if anything, read between the lines and go, "Wow, that makes perfect sense." Because one might think that, "Oh, yes, you want a perfectly precise, kiss right here." Once you start blending these two together, well, that's fine if you had like a 1.5 degree pitch, because then that will guarantee that your fretboard, that your bridge stays right at about 11/16 of an inch max from the top of the body to the top of this the G, the G string. But if you're pitching a little bit more, then you got to drop this whole plane down into the body a little bit more. I'm pitching 2 degrees, 2.5 degrees, 2.25. So you got to go down in the body a little bit. And what is that? That's a vintage Explorer. That's exactly how they were built. It's also a vintage Flying V. That's how they were built. Okay. So think about those things, because you'll have extremely good intentions, and then you'll be building your guitar per a 2 degree pitch, but then you flush it out too high, and then you'll end up damn near 3/4 of an inch back here, and that's getting a little bit too high for a small bodied electric guitar. Okay. And I really just went off the cuff with this whole video, but I've done enough of these videos to know that if I don't start getting nervous or anxious about the conversation I'm having, I realize that I'm not just rambling, idiotic information, because I'll go back and watch some of my videos and go, "Good God, that was brilliant." Even I didn't ever think about that in context with just doing the whole project. But I think it might come off as a little bit of rambling to some, but if you're a woodworker and you're truly in the shop, you kind of want to hear the war stories of, what somebody is thinking after they've screwed up a few projects or got a few bridges a little bit too high back in the early 2000s, or maybe a little bit too low. And does it happen to just us? No, man. Look at any of the early 1950s flying V's, and even the early Les Pauls. They had the neck pitched way too low, and they ran into this problem where the bridge was so low, and the thumb wheels were all pretty much all the way down on the body, and they couldn't go down any further. Then they had to come in here and they had to machine some of the bridge off to get it to go even lower. So even they had them pitched way too low. And it's amazing all that pitch roll, y'all, how much it affects how when you pick a custom guitar up. Oh man, yeah, it feels like a Strat. Oh man, yeah, it feels like a Gretsch with a B3 Bigsby and kind of high and the real tall Filtertrons, and you're able to plant your pinky and do hybrid finger picking. Well, that the reason a Gretsch feels the way a Gretsch feels, and a Gibson feels the way a Gibson feels, and a Fender and a Telecaster and a D'Angelico or a Robert Benedetto, it's based on those three factors right there: roll, pitch, and yaw, and bridge heights. And if it's arch top, how much is it arched? Because put it into perspective, if it's a flat top, it's either a flat top body without a pick guard, or it is a flat top body with a pick guard that has a certain thickness. And when you feel that pick guard, you better believe it, man. It's amazing. Okay, so just think about those things. It's extremely exciting when you know what you're doing and you've done it up enough that you know that, yeah, if I hold that at 5/8 of an inch or 11/16 down there, she's going to play like a dream. But if I get this screwed up and I'm sitting here fitting it and I'm putting templates up here or tools up here and I'm measuring, and this baby's ending up being over 3/4 of an inch, it's not going to feel anything like this product right here. You got to go back to not the drawing board. You got to go back to the routing station. You got to clean that stuff up and get that pitch under control. And then this pitch right here. Okay. So I'm going to finish building the guitar, and the next time you see it, it will have this neck epoxy glued into place, and it will be turning into a guitar. And parts are coming in. Let me check the time. Well, I'll just leave this put together. I'll open up this blue. Let me check the time. 37 minutes. Oh, it's got that block of wood in the way. I'll just put that over there for added drama. Let's open up our Woodcraft. This is the tent. This is the trans tent. Just received it about an hour ago. Oh, I completely forgot. I went to Woodcraft yesterday. I'll give you an idea of how well they pack it. For this little bitty thing, that's Woodcraft. And always save that for your future packing. Well, they would have it all. Let me check the time. 38 minutes. And I gotta be really careful because I'll end up cutting that plastic bottle. Let me pause for a second. Make sure it's rolling. I paused once in a video and then I forgot to undo the pause and started talking for like 10 minutes. Felt like an idiot after I realized I had never even unpaused the video. So, well, this is just turning into a nightmare. All right, so this is what you can expect if you order your $30-something blue Nitro tent from Woodcraft. This stuff, I'm not going to open it right now because it is like permanent and I don't want to turn blue. But Stuff is super, super concentrated. The old bottles are more like this right here, but apparently they've gone to the smaller. They're still 2 ounces. Okay. So that is what's going to turn it into a sapphire blue guitar, and I will be doing a little bit of tinting and shading in order to pull that off. Very, very little tinting. I'll just be doing more shading with the black, but to get to the color that we want. Because if you're, and I'm not going to start talking about this, we don't have time to talk about it, but you can either stain your raw wood with that tint mixed with an alcohol or mixed with water. But if you were going to stain this piece of maple with the blue and you did not want to raise the grain, then use denatured alcohol. Because if you put it in water, it'll fur up, and especially like a curly maple or any sort of figured maple, it'll just get really furry, and then you'll have to sand it, and then you run the risk of getting blotchy spots where you sanded it. So that's another story for another song, but I will eventually talk about that a little bit. But basically, this will just be achieving the color that we want. Okay. I did what I was going to mention. I did go to Woodcraft yesterday, and what's funny, you would think, well, why didn't you just buy that at Woodcraft? Well, because I wasn't certain. I went ahead and just ordered it from Woodcraft online, and I bought this. This is the only bird's eye maple that they had in house. They were completely sold out, but it's a beautiful piece. Even though don't let that spook you if you're building something, because you're just that sometimes that's what you're having to work with. Because they're not going to call this, because there's an enormous amount of quality material up there for your woodworker, and they're not going to throw that away. This is probably the most perfect plain sewn. It's quarter sewn this way, but flat sewn this way. This is probably the most beautiful flat sewn billet I've ever seen. And what could I get out of this? Basically, one strat or telly neck. Plain sewn, and then one arch top neck where there would be a multi-piece, like a three-piece neck, quarter sewn. But if I build two jazz necks, like a L5, I'll be able to get two L5 necks out of this, and they'll be quarter sewn with a decorative center line of like rosewood, maple, rosewood, real fine lines and stuff like that. Tap tones, I haven't tapped on it, but this is, that's why I love using the bird's eye maple. It's just a beautiful and unbelievably stable. It's like just arrow straight. And as I mentioned, came from Woodcraft over in Birmingham, Alabama, in their climate controlled shop. In their actual their like main display, their showroom. So it's in an air conditioned environment, 24/7. Unbelievably stable. I would still let it acclimate to your shop if you've got an air conditioned shop. It's early September. I have to wear a sweatshirt. It's so cold in here because I got to keep this stuff under control. Okay. All right. I hope there wasn't any. Well, I'm not going to apologize, because if you're building a guitar, this is a ton of information that I don't ever see anybody give out on eBay, on what is this, YouTube? I never see anybody go into this detail. I see a lot of dancing bears and sexy girls doing whatever it is they do, but I've never seen anybody just really get in and do a nuts and bolts over over their right hand shoulder of how to do this stuff. And it took me years to figure out how to relax and get comfortable and actually enjoy it, because the first probably 5 guitars I built that were like truly focused on building a truly nice guitar, they were hand carved arch top jazz guitars per Robert Benedetto specs. And you might think, oh wow, that's amazing, that's really cool. It was the most excruciating experience I had ever had, because I had invested way too much money in all the choice woods, and was learning as I was going. And the whole time I was so wound up trying to keep from screwing things up. It was miserable. And I finally sold those guitars and shipped them wherever they shipped. But man, it took 5 to 10 guitars until I ever got to a point where I actually enjoyed building guitars. So maybe keep that in the back of your mind. So I'll check the time. 44 minutes. That is a long video, but nonetheless, it should be a lot of really good information, and we're on point. I'm waiting on all this material to come in, Art, so I appreciate you giving me a shot at doing this. It's still going to be an exciting build, and I'll try to, I'm looking around the shop, I'll try to only do a video when I see that there's some sort of benefit for the client first and foremost, but also for the guys that are out there that, you know, are seriously considering building a guitar. And does it have to be just an Explorer replica? Absolutely not. You can, you know, down the center line, it's a guitar. It's a flat top guitar with a pitched neck at, you know, roughly 2 degrees. Build any footprint you want. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next video.